Hey everybody, so in this video I'm going to share how I learned how to speed read. I increased my reading efficiency by at least twofold. I thought this was a myth. I didn't think it was real, but I'm going to share what I learned here in the past couple of months on increasing my reading efficiency and why this is so important. If you know me, you'll know that I consume about a book per week. Admittedly, a good portion of those are audio books, and I would love to consume even more books, but it feels like we have this big time constraint. You know that we make a lot of videos about efficiency and productivity, so I think we're all on the same page when realizing that many of us feel like we just don't have enough time in the day. We feel like the last thing we can do is sit down, pause everything, turn off our phones, and just read a book for an hour a day. It feels very unlikely to do that. So if you can learn some of these tips here, there's 4 primary ones that I'm going to share in this video. I really think it can speed up everything. You know, maybe you don't have to spend 10 hours a week reading books, but you can spend 5 hours a week reading books. And one last point here before we get really into the video is that this is probably mostly for people who are looking to read for increasing their human capital. Sometimes, you know, there's something to be said about reading slowly when we're just sitting down, relaxing with a cup of coffee somewhere, and we want to just really, really relax. So this is more so for people who are trying to read with a purpose. Maybe you're in college, your professor told you you have to read a book, and you don't want to spend a week having to read it. This is going to help you out a lot, okay? And I have to give credit where it's due. I learned a lot of this from Tim Ferriss, from some of his podcasts, so go ahead, check him out if you want to learn more about these different tactics. All right, so the first thing we have to do is analyze how many words we can read in a minute so that we can sort of get our starting place. We can understand where we are at the moment, and then once you implement these tips, you're going to see how much you've increased your speed by. Hopefully, just literally after watching this video, you're going to increase your speed by at least 20 to 30%. Probably a lot more than that just by implementing these. So go ahead and you're going to time yourself and see how many words you can read in a minute. I would recommend doing this maybe 2 or 3 times even so you can get an average out of this. Try to read at your normal pace so that you're not kind of rushing yourself because you feel like you're timing yourself, so you're going to rush it a little bit. And you can just estimate how many words are on a page. You can count how many are on a line, how many lines on a page, and sort of do a rough, quick and dirty estimate on how many words you can read in a minute. Or you can actually count all of these words to see what you're at the moment. And don't worry, if you read really slow, that's okay. So that's the first thing you want to do. Now, once you do that, we need to get the first understanding here, which is understanding how eyes move, because this is going to help our efficiency quite a bit, okay? So naturally, we think that our eyes can slowly just scan across a page. We think that when we're reading, we just scan across the page, and then we go back and we smoothly scan across the page again. But this isn't actually really what happens with our eye movement. And like I said, I learned this from Tim Ferriss, but it's such a great tip here that you can use. So if you close one eye and then you try to take your other eye and slowly move it across, right? So try this now. Close one eye and then slowly try to move your other eye across. And what you're going to notice is that your eye doesn't actually go smoothly. It jumps. It jumps from one position to another position to another position, and it doesn't smoothly scan across. And so this is why it's important for when we're reading books. You need to have some type of fixed position for your eye. And this is why, try this again now, close one eye and look at your finger, and now follow your finger with your other eye. You're going to notice you can follow your finger very smoothly. Your eyeball's moving very smoothly. And so this is why we need to use our finger or some type of guide for when we are reading at all times. Whether you're reading a book or you're reading some essays in college or something, whatever it might be, using a finger or using a guide to underline every single word that your brain is processing is going to be crucial. It also helps with not having to jump lines, because sometimes we accidentally read the wrong line. It's going to save you a little bit of time from that as well. But it's mostly because of our eye movement. And I think a lot of people kind of knew this, but we didn't understand the science behind it. So hopefully you can start doing that. And that instantly, automatically will probably increase your speed by at least 20 to 30% just by doing that. All right, the second step here is to stop using the entire page when you are reading a book. So our eyes are kind of like a typewriter, right? And it's really slow and it's really inefficient. So the way that we are taught to read from a young age is we start all the way over on the very first word, and then we go all the way across, and then we go back, right? It really reminds me of a typewriter and how it works, right? We go across, we go to the very end, and then we go back. And so what you can start doing is you can actually start by starting your eyes, your fixed position on your eyes will start right around after at least the first or second word on the page, and then it ends at the second to last or maybe right before the last word. But this way our eyes are not going all the way off into the abyss here where it's an empty page where there's nothing else and it's blank at the end. So hopefully this is making sense here what I'm saying, but what you can actually do is draw 2 lines down on your book right around after the first word. You can do this after 2 or 3 words even if you feel comfortable for that. But essentially what we're doing here is we're using our peripheral vision to read words, because we don't need to look at the exact word. We can actually sort of have it slightly in our peripherals and still understand what that word is. And this might actually take a little bit of time getting used to. I know the first few pages where I tried this, it was kind of difficult, but keeping your eyes within these margins here, I'll draw this out on paper so you can see, keeping your eyes within these margins here will increase our efficiency ever so slightly, but it definitely does have an effect on this. And I know some of this sounds crazy because some people don't want to go this hardcore with speed reading, but this can really help you. Now, I think a big question though that people are having right now is they say, if I'm trying to speed read, I feel like I'm not able to get as much out of this book as what I could if I was just reading it really, really slowly. And I kind of want to argue against that a little bit. You know, if you're reading a really dense book, then that might be the case. You might have to really slowly read and pause. But if you're reading a book that maybe is not very dense or it's slightly even easy to read, then this speed reading technique can really be valuable. And this leads us into step number 3, which is to stop vocalizing the words in your head. So think about the last time that you had a reading class, the last time somebody taught you how to read. You were probably in 3rd grade, maybe 2nd grade. We were very young. And so this is the last time that somebody taught us how to read. And what did they do when they did this? Well, they would make us read out loud. We would have to read out loud to the class, maybe read out loud to ourselves, and then eventually they would say, read silently to yourselves. Well, what happened when teachers made us do this, when parents made us do this? So many people, since when they were 5 years old, 6 years old, we read to ourselves in our head. And we're vocalizing. We have this voice in our head that's saying all of the words as we go through on a page. This is a habit that I really urge you to try to break. We've been doing it for decades. I don't know how old you are. I'm 22 and I've been doing this for probably 15 years now, of vocalizing every word in my head so I'm kind of reading it to myself. Here's why we don't want to do that. Because if you're vocalizing every word, either you're actually saying it out loud or you're just saying it in your brain. I think you know what I'm talking about. Like we have this little voice in our head. The reason why we don't want to do this is because it limits our reading ability to our speaking ability. It limits how fast we can go based off of how fast we can say words. And so this is really going to hinder your ability to speed up your reading. And here's why it's important, because you don't have to be able to speak in order to comprehend something. This is why you'll skip over things sometimes. Maybe when you're watching a video, you know what they're saying, so you can skip over it. You can watch it in double speed, right? Because you can comprehend it faster than maybe what other people might be able to do. And so, or at least what other people think that they're capable of doing. So stop vocalizing it in your head. This is also going to take a little bit of time getting used to, but you're going to see once you get that voice out of your head that it's going to be a lot easier to digest words and really just bring them in and be able to understand what's happening. All right, so the 4th tip actually has 2 parts to it. It's to do some type of priming before you even read a book, right? So this book is called Narrative Economics. And so what I do before I ever read a book is I'll spend 5 to 10 minutes and I will learn about the author, I will learn about their background, I will learn about what the book is specifically, kind of the message that they're conveying, and then also take a good look at the table of contents, because this is going to give you a lot of context when you're reading through so that you don't have to sort of grasp for context and figure out what the hell's going on, right? If I gave you a random page of a random book and I just showed it to you, it would take more time to comprehend what the book is saying, because you need to understand what's the author's position, where are they from, what's their background, are they a professor at Princeton, and so you start to understand this a little bit better, and this can also help with your comprehension when you are trying to read books efficiently and effectively. And then the other part here, just a quick little tip, is to make sure that when you're reading books, you're doing this in a somewhat upright position. So I like to have the book raised. Sometimes your arm gets tired, so I can put it up on something. But this also helps with posture as well, right? So if you're kind of curled up and your neck is craned and you're looking down and you don't have a good what's it called, diaphragm breathing. I don't know what the people call it, but it definitely helps a lot when you're able to sit up and read like that rather than kind of hunched over. So those are my tips for reading much more efficiently. I'm telling you, if you use these 4 tips, you are going to increase your reading speeds by at least 20 to 30%, probably a lot more, especially by using that guide or that finger. It's going to help you a lot. So hopefully you found some value in this. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're coming up on 1 million subscribers, which is pretty insane. Wasn't really planning on that happening, and I'm freezing cold, so there's no heat up here in the mountains. So I'll see everybody in next week's video.